When Gen Z protested at Jantar Mantar, they captured the imagination of the entire country, and they also made their voice heard loud and clear on social media, especially Instagram. The protests, though, brought to the fore concerns with regard to digital censorship and also the government's clampdown on online content, as well as the people who created this content. There are also concerns about digital surveillance that took place at the protest site at Jantar Mantar and the manner in which this information can be used later on. To discuss the various issues emerging out of the protests with regard to the use of online media, digital censorship, as also surveillance, we have with us Apar Gupta, who is a lawyer, digital rights activist, and founder director of Internet Freedom Foundation. Thank you so much, Apar, for joining us.
Thank you for having me in this conversation.
To begin with, I want to ask you about the digital surveillance that took place at Jantar Mantar. And the Delhi police used digital tools
Yes.
and AI-enabled technology for facial recognition to sort of keep a tab on the protesters.
Yes.
How far did this adhere to the laid down rules and regulations and the legal framework that we have right now?
So the video surveillance which was happening in the Jantar Mantar area is actually happening in large parts of Delhi. What was different in the Jantar Mantar area was that they had a Iksana van which is procured actually for the G20 and was built by this Indian company called CP Plus. And alongside that, they had a mobile command and control center. So they were also drawing this footage both through their cameras, also through the nested frameworks of cameras all around the Jantar Mantar area. And when the protest also flowed into other regions of central Delhi, which includes Connaught Place, I think so also Vijaypath a little bit. So all of that was actually feeding into the Delhi police's regular surveillance which was taking place of the people, but also specialized and focused more towards the protesters. Another layer to this was that there were a lot of plain clothes police people or even those on contract who were deployed to take pictures and to videograph people who were coming to the protests. And there were also reports of drones. So what I want to explain through this is that there was a very high degree of video and audio surveillance which was happening at a Jantar Mantar protest area. And immediately a person will ask that, well, Apar, a lot of this is happening in the public domain. It is happening when a person themselves is going to a public protest. What is wrong in it? The wrong in this is that many times when people do visit a protest site, they are visiting that protest site with the expectation also of not being seen. Everyone does not want to stand on the podium, on the dais and give a speech. A lot of people are going there out of curiosity, out of solidarity. A lot of people, young people especially, due to all of these actions were wearing masks. Even when Delhi was having one of the best AQIs it can offer as a city. So what we need to understand is that this kind of incessant, rampant, perpetual, invasive video surveillance causes a chilling effect. It prevents people from joining the protest, from exercising their constitutional right towards freedom of speech and expression and of assembly. And when you have these rights and they are being interfered by this video surveillance, one should look at what are the rules governing it. Here the rules are completely absent and are required to be made through an act of legislature. So there needs to be a law which needs to be passed. And a law needs to be passed because in 2017, on August 21st, the Supreme Court of India pronounced the K.S. Puttaswamy judgment in which it affirmed the fundamental right to privacy despite the union government disputing that it was there in the constitution itself. And here the Supreme Court said that whenever any person's privacy is interfered with, in fact, the Supreme Court has written a voluminous judgment. There are multiple opinions by Supreme Court judges. And one judge in their opinion says that just because I post a Facebook status does not mean I want the world to see it. If I have 400 friends and a locked Facebook account, it means I want only my 400 Facebook friends to see it, right? And this basically is our expectation of privacy. And if the state wants to see that Facebook status message, or it wants to take the pictures of protesters, incessantly surveil them, then it has to pass a law. It has not passed a law. And due to this, at the very threshold, this entire activity is illegal. The state, we need to remember, does not have assumed legality. There is a formalized system which is permitted through the constitution. And of course, there are some residuary powers officers have, but that is all created through acts of parliament. Parliament is a body we select on the basis of our vote which we cast. This is the basic civics lesson everyone needs to know, especially the police.
So, this was like a never before sort of surveillance that was undertaken at a protest site, and the use of this kind of
I
technology.
can't say that with very high degrees of confidence because surveillance in Delhi has been an ongoing project. We also saw during the Northeast Delhi riots the use of facial recognition technology by police officers through drones, cameras, and also a lot of these deployments have had cross-partisan support. For instance, even the Aam Aadmi Party, in response to the crimes against women in Delhi, had launched a CCTV camera scheme in which people in neighborhoods could get a CCTV which would be funded by the government. The electricity would be paid by the government, and had only a standard operating procedure, what is called as an SOP, in which the live feed could also be shared with the market association or with the RWA, which puts into the very question that whether a patriarchal society in which most of the RWA members will be men, how will they assess that footage for legality and crimes against women or for policing their behavior? And a lot of this comes from the Nirbhaya gang rape incident, because we have looked towards technology, towards fixing social solutions, and technology quite often creates new problems, especially when that technology is misapplied. If you're giving a sick or a diseased person the wrong medicine, it will cause them to further suffer injury.
You talked about the chilling effect it had on the protesters, and many of them wore masks to hide their faces.
Yes.
And the fear was perhaps not misplaced because real-time matching of faces was
Yes.
taking place with an existing database. So, what information do you have about what database was this, and if information was being gathered and collected by the police, and in what ways can that information be used in the future?
So the information we have is not of the protest. My organization has filed right to information requests with the Delhi police, asking for various uh, requirements of what is the type of cameras, how many cameras, then where was the feed taken, where was it stored, how was it processed, how is it matched, what is the database in the matching, what is the error correction percentage. Because the little bits of information which we do know about the Delhi police having its own CCTV networks and then using AI for matching that comes from a Delhi High Court case which is called Shadan Haldar, in which the Delhi police said that because there is a problem of young children running away from their homes and families searching for them, they are going to deploy facial recognition technology. So it's not just a CCTV, it's also something which matches the face of a child and tries to reunite them with a family. Now, most people will say, wow, this is such a great idea to use technology, tech for good, those kind of things. However, what was found was during the course of the case was that the Delhi police was not able to reunite even one missing child on the basis of this technology. Instead, what we got to know in 2022 through the annual report of the Delhi police, it wanted to then deploy the same technology which it had used, which in policy we call as a function creep, at railway stations, at any kind of civic junctions which are there. So what we can take away from this is basically there's an absolute lack of transparency. The small shards of transparency which do come through court cases, comes through an RTI we filed in 2022, in which the Delhi police was very evasive. We had to go up to the CIC, and then it was disclosed that the 80% match is sufficient to establish identity in the view of the SOPs that the Delhi police has. And 80% match basically means this, that if you are at a protest site in which many people are there, you're surrounded by many people, right? And a flicker of your face, or your face also may have changed. You may be having a beard, you may have changed your hairstyle, you may be also wearing a headgear, right? If you're doing those kind of things, and most people on a given day do dress up, they do dress differently, right? And a face is also a biological artifact which changes over time based on a person's health. Now, that image grab of that day, right, which may be at a distance, may not have the proper lighting, will be matched against a photograph which is queried from one of the photographs which may be there in your government IDs. It can be a driver's license, it can be election ID, it can be an Aadhaar photo which you had given. And if you look at those photos yourself, sometimes we show them as a game to our friends to just invite some kind of jest or laughter that, look how I used to look. And they are not photographs which are regularly updated. So these are the two photographs they match at a 80% level. And that 80% level, as per the ACLU of California, which did a study, was sufficient to match completely different people. And the two sets of people they did match were senators from the US House of Representatives with convicted felons and the mugshots. So it is completely inaccurate, it is misapplied, and there is a lack of transparency in us knowing what the police is doing with the video grabs. What we do know is that this did happen because there were two independent journalists who peeked into the Delhi police vans and then have videographed the screens of the police as the videographs from the protest site were showing on a monitor, which was being matched against another face. And we have also documented this in one of our short videos, where there's a accuracy score at the very bottom. So there's a name, there's age, there's a gender, and then there's an accuracy score. So it is trying to match your real world identity, which is incredibly open to error. And on the basis of that, because there have been 0 FIRs filed, because the police has also been saying that there was violence done by the protesters. There were some people with criminal antecedents. There are people who may be completely innocent.
They've put out a figure saying that using this technology, they could find that more than 2,800 people with criminal background were present at the protest site.
And just in terms of instance, let us query that a little deeply. What kind of criminal incidents it may be? Of course, I think the police has put out a breakup, but a lot of the people who usually protest are also arrested. They're not only detained for violation of, let's say, prohibitory orders. They are also arrested for, cases which completely don't match the offenses for which they are arrested for, like destruction of public property. And these are the kind of people will be called as criminals or people who are accused of crimes, which immediately to any person's mind will be, while this is a very reasonable implementation of this technology, it's not. There's so many people who in college have protested when their papers have gotten leaked, and plenty of them have also been arrested and been charged with cases or put up a Facebook post these days or Instagram reel.
So do you feel that this was done also to perhaps dissuade people from participating in protests in the future?
Yes, it was done with that intention. There was a constant attempt, but we need to understand that from the perspective of, rather than a instruction which goes out from a person to the police force, from the perspective of what is the structural nature of our state, which does not like people who come and ask for accountability. And the state includes the police. The police is getting to use the tools it already has. And it is going to deploy technology if it has a culture in which it asks for the obedience of law and order through shows of force and violence, rather than through community trust, rather than through, and if you looked at the protesters and also the protest calls, they were almost disarming. They were asking young people to come with a copy of their favorite book and a flower.
Also, another big takeaway from the protests was the use of social media. The youngsters really took Instagram especially by storm. What does it tell us about the emergence of social media as a forum for, public debate or dissemination of information. I mean, it went beyond just mobilizing people to come and attend the protests. It became like a parallel online protest forum. How do you look at that?
This was a cause protest, but it was also a content protest. And I come from a generation which is not digitally native. I come from a generation which has had a transition towards the internet, starting out with VCRs. And this is a generation which is digitally native. In fact, even younger millennials are digitally native. And to them, protest does not only mean physical congregation, it also means a form of online assembly. So if you look at the creation of the CJP, the creation of the CJP itself as a pressure group starts out as a parody, not as a serious idea. Completely vibe coded on Claude, a website is created, an Instagram page is created. And the CJP's first few posts are thanking people because they're asking for accountability from the government, not about student paper leaks. Those issues are not there immediately. It's more a 5-point broader charter which they had initially. It was the young people of India voicing their disappointment with the system which is failing them, utterly failing them to provide them any kind of sense of safety. Not only the conduct of the exams. Because if you see a lot of these reels also, they're talking about things with perspectives of mental health, trauma, right? They say that, oh, आप क्या trauma देंगे हमें, हमें तो parents नहीं दिया है. And they're doing it with a smile. They're doing it because they want their future to change. So of course, a lot of this was lived online, was created online. And also one should also remember that the traditional mainstream media was also not covering the protests initially. It was the influencers, even when there was a very sparse crowd there at that time. And what was happening at that time was that you notice that there was actual content gold happening there every time. People were coming, dancing, and there was such disparagement that, oh, it's just a natak. It is, but the thing is, protests have always had mohalla nataks. It has a cultural element. So people were disparaging the influencers, but the influencers have so much trust from the people because the people at every day are holding them accountable. They have to live their lives online. So this was a content movement. But at the same point in time, we need to also ground that in the physical mobilization which was necessary to assert that power. And the young people recognize that. At the same point in time, I like to say that there are deep vulnerabilities in this model, given that it relies on social media platforms, which are regulated entities engaged in surveillance capitalism, basically ad companies selling your data, serving you ads, the biggest corporations in the world, having the most amount of money, more than the GDP of countries, and India is arguably one of their largest markets. So there is a vulnerability in this model as well. So we should not disparage that this was an online movement. We need to accept it because it has real power and real value.
So the youngsters have completely taken to social media. Is this a reflection on traditional media that the youngsters are consuming their news, disseminating news completely on social media?
I wouldn't say they're completely doing it. And also, traditional media or establishment media or the newspapers of record or the television broadcast channels which claim they are news, and sometimes they are, most times they're not. I wouldn't say that they have not taken to social media. They have been trying for a very long time. They are very successful products also which have been built. For instance, if you look at the India Today group, what it did with Lalan Top, for instance, I'm just using that as an illustration to establish that social media integration with traditional news gathering organizations has happened, has views, and has been done successfully. What was a little different in this movement was that the young people thought that the moderation and the expected framing of conversations as well as its vocabulary of media is formal, the way I'm talking to you. They want a much more from what I could sense, a much more unfiltered uh, form of expression that mixed
More spontaneous.
emotion, which came more from an emotional and intellectual core rather than just being a op-ed in the Indian Express or the Hindu or Times of India. I'm naming these papers because they're papers of record, considered papers of record. The other thing which is important to also consider is that the first few people who supported this protest and the cause of the protesters were social media influencers, right? So they were picking up the issues much more quickly, responding to young people and doing it all by themselves. So that built a level of trust. And a lot of the young people themselves were making their own forms of short videos, or they were even writing these graphic posts, carousels on Instagram. They were organizing by themselves on the basis of social media. So organizations which are not social media first, right, are stretching their organizational culture towards also building an existing product and organizational culture towards integrating it with social media. Whereas the very site of the protest, as well as the very site of the protesters and the very site of the influencers' content, is Instagram first, right? So there will be a difference. And the second thing I think it does demonstrate is that there is a very low amount of trust, not only young people, even millennials have today in television news broadcasting media, given its financial model and its propagation of hate speech, which has weakened our national fabric over more than a decade. It has framed certain communities in a negative light, which has now been imbibed by large sections of Indian society for the electoral gains of the present government. Because the present government is also its financial benefactor. And also, a lot of these media enterprises are part of a larger conglomerate, which may have business interests, which include regulated sectors such as mining or infrastructure, right? So, this is the problem.
And how do you look at the way the established political parties have responded to the use of social media during the CJP-led protests? PM Modi himself has taken to Instagram in a big way. We have leader of opposition Rahul Gandhi also coming on Instagram very frequently now. So how do you see the political establishment, the way they have responded to this?
I think the political establishment has responded in a way in which it plays to their interest, their ideals. And if you take the government, it's responded in two ways. It's considered this movement and demand for accountability and the forcing out of a union minister as a setback to its absolute power and dominion over the Indian people, which is a way of thinking which should not be there in any democratic society. It has responded by censorship, both legally as well as by placing pressure on social media platforms, and news reports on this are available in the public domain. And it is concerned with what the algorithm, not from the perspective of transparency, which will benefit people like you and me in knowing why are we seeing what we are seeing, but they're looking at the black box algorithm of a Silicon Valley platform such as Instagram and asking it, why is anti-India content? Anti-India, in their view, is anti-government. Anti-government, in their view, is what is anti-prime minister. Anti-prime minister, what in their view is a student asking for accountability from the prime minister. So that's the way the government has responded, and it will only become more severe, as many commentators have already stated. And this also matches with both the uh, electoral interests of the ruling government, in which it wants to be in power not only at the center but at every stage of our democratic polity, from the municipality to every state government, to the government itself, to the other institutions of government. And this is as per its own popular slogans of reference to it as a multiple engine apparatus. Okay, 4 engines, 3 engines, 6 engines, 8 engines, whatever. Okay. Now, if you look at the Lokniti CSDS study, which came after the 2024 elections, a lot of people, sizable number, about 30%, if I remember, made their political choices and cast their ballots on the basis of what they saw online, which includes WhatsApp, YouTube, and Instagram. Okay, so it does play to the political interest. And two more information points on the government. The government, right before the conduct of the 2024 elections, made a media landscape of vulnerability, and this was an environment in which all exit polls except one said they will gain more than 400 seats in the parliament and will be transformative for us as a country, as a constitution, as our ideals. And the prime minister, right before that, there were Bollywood movies on patriotism, which I don't think so were about patriotism, but were about a certain form of nationalism. There were also these podcast interviews, which were done very, very widely. There was a National Creators Award given to Beer Biceps, Ranveer Alabadia, who did a set of podcast interviews with union ministers without disclosing it was a government collaboration. There was subsequent to the 2024 elections, when the government came in with a reduced mandate, and it's a coalition government, as much as people don't remember and recognize it in 2026, the Prime Minister's first address from the BJP headquarters was to thank not only countrymen, but content creators. That is in the first sentence. Okay, so the BJP and the Prime Minister recognize that the protest is a vulnerability because they have relied, and there's a very, very good op-ed in the Hindu, which was very widely shared, that this is a WhatsApp party which relies on distribution through the thinking of the Shakha. And this is a young generation which is much more distributed, relies on short video. And that's the gap there. So this is why when the Prime Minister's first video, I think, came out on 24th of July or 23rd of July at midnight, with a tilted camera, you had young commentators below that writing cringe. You had young commentators below that stating that it wasn't connecting with them. And then you saw subsequently in Parliament speeches by BJP lawmakers using Gen Z phraseology such as clap and clock. I don't know which ones. But yeah, it completely lacked a sense of connection. And I think here the opposition parties are doing much better because they're connecting on the issues. It's going much beyond language. Of course, you need to do a short video. You need to be authentic, but that authenticity needs to connect with a young person, feeling that you are hearing them, right? And this is where I think the opposition parties have been doing very, very well over a long period of time. A lot of Mr. Gandhi's, Rahul Gandhi's posts are shared much more widely than the Prime Minister today. And one can argue that why is that happening? Similarly, with several opposition leaders in North India, from what I notice, who are very, very upfront with how they have been undertaking social media for a long time. I can just tell you from my constituency, the person who lost the last election from the Aam Aadmi Party was Saurabh Bharadwaj, immensely popular in the area. He lost it. As BJP came to power, there was a wave. But when there was AQI, which was AQI is a big issue in Delhi, and during the winters, I remember that the Delhi Minister for Environment, Mr. Sirsa, said that they're going to do some cloud seeding, which will result in the reduction of AQI, and that did not happen. So Mr. Saurabh Bharadwaj actually shot a video in which there was water coming down, and he play acts and he shows that the water coming down is coming from where, and then he looks up and it's his tank which is leaking. That's the way he did it more than 1.5 years ago. And this is what is connecting with people. The sense of play, a sense of humor, real human emotion, because politicians are people, right? So I think there's a vast, vast difference in a government propaganda apparatus and opposition politicians who are genuinely trying to connect with the people. And of course, people will say here that, Apar, you're biased. Well, I acknowledge and own up this bias completely.
And how do you look at the way the government, on the one hand, it tried to reach out to the younger generation using social media. On the other hand, there was this crackdown on the online content that they had put out.
Especially young women.
Yes, there's this online campaign going on. FIRs have been launched. allegations of
On them.
profanity.
On them.
Yes. So,
On the women.
yeah. How do you look at this? Does it really adhere to the laws that we have with regard to the manner in which objectionable content can be pulled down on social media? Are those laws, those rules being followed?
We have the law and then we have the application of the law, and there's a reason why I say this. You have statements which are made after the conduct of military operations between India and Pakistan, in which there's a Facebook post by a professor calling for peace, and them almost losing, or they lost their employment, they were charged, criminally charged. It's very disappointing. It goes up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court does not find any offense with the words, but then says there may be a subtext in the words itself. This is when that person has the best legal representation. Mr. Sibbal argues his case, and there's a compromise through which then eventually that person goes on to live their life. So the common cause study, which is called Policing in India, a few years ago looked at, like, it's quantitative, it's very, very clear. It surveyed people in 11 states. I keep telling people this, and there were about 10,000 people. They asked them that, do you feel scared of voicing your political opinion, your social opinion, anything related to society rather than about, let's say, even cricket is contentious, or food is contentious, but just about the everyday things in life, like Bollywood, for instance, even that's contentious though. But can you speak much more directly about, let's say, your chief minister, your prime minister? And 7 out of 10 people said they do not speak up on social media. They self-censor because they fear legal prosecution. And as a lawyer, as a constitutionalist, I feel very, very disappointed that when clients come to me today, I do a risk assessment rather than a legal scrutiny of content. And a risk assessment is very different. A risk assessment depends on who you are, how do you look like, what's your religion, how old are you, who are your parents, what are your affiliations, which organization do you belong to. Because there is a level of vile hatred which has been enabled, in which the very people who are speaking up or asking questions from people who are in power are put to threat. And the people who are putting these threats are quite often called trolls. They are not trolls, they are engaging in criminal acts. These criminal acts include the disclosure of identity of a minor, as was done during the CJP protests, with messages to hunt them down, or of young women by using deepfake imagery to enhance their bosom and to sexualize them in order to show them to be intellectually dumb. Because in a patriarchal society, the more beautiful a woman looks, the less intelligent she is. Or using the criminal law apparatus then to say that the cuss words which are used against the prime minister will call social disharmony. They will only call social disharmony if a person worships the prime minister as a god, which we need to question ourselves. So what has happened after the protest? This organized campaign of hatred, targeting, doxing and shaming women online is continuing. Criminal action against the perpetrators is not being done, which includes takedown of this content on social media first, or the criminal prosecutions which should follow. None of this is happening right now. Because it is also felt, and I can't speak to it directly, that a certain form of a bahubali, a digital bahubali is required to maintain the show of force and power and dominion of this government.
How do you look at the role of intermediaries or the social media providers here? Because there has been an allegation that there is immense pressure being applied on them, and they are being forced to take down content. Here, you may also maybe talk about the Sahyog portal, which works under the Home Ministry, and the way it has been used by agencies to order takedown of social media content and also withhold accounts.
Yes. So the censorship which is being done around the Jantar Mantar protest, the Chalo Sansad March, subsequently also of very, very unrelated content now, like the E20 claims which are being made by many people are damaging their cars. Or even something very, very commonsensical, that if you're blending E20, why is the price reduction not being passed on to a consumer, given that it doesn't only result in a middle class person paying more for their fuel bill, it also results in an overall greater expenditure on the grocery basket of every household. Okay, like the truck runs on that also somehow. So here the thing is, according to me, one needs to consider that the censorship apparatus which has been built through law, but it is also enforced by a wink towards the social media platform, which is sometimes a little much more forceful hold. And the forceful hold is applied by the government again and again, because these are large corporations. They are not based in India. There are arguments of nationalism which are quite often made, which can be made easily against these platforms, should be made also sometimes. They make money off our people, take our data, serve us advertising, and it's a very broken and imperfect model. But the government does not correct it. The government, in fact, wants to turn it into a pulpit for its official propaganda to extend its power. Hence, what the kind of notices you have been seeing for the last 2 days are not due to legal orders. They are notices which are being posted on Instagram that we have taken this content down due to your automated filter in compliance with the IT rules guidelines. So the IT rules are a form of law which is through executive notification being made. But according to me and our work at IFF, where we have explained it's unconstitutional, Parliament has not given the authority to the Ministry of Electronics and IT and the Ministry of Information Broadcasting to make those rules. It's still with them, right? And they're pending challenges. There's some stay orders also on it. Now, when you look at the legal infrastructure, it's tying with the platform doing this itself. There's no specific government order that take down the reel from Ashutosh Ranka's account regarding the removal of Sonam Wangchuk, which he's tweeted yesterday. That notice is saying that Meta or Instagram has done it proactively. Or when an account and certain posts are restricted, as Mr. Arvind Kejriwal has shown, as many other opposition leaders have shown, Indian Youth Congress has shown. These are all being restricted by the platform without giving any transparency and are not being done under a legal order. Secondly, legal orders are being given at a very alarming rate. Our work through the course of this year has shown that there are several justifications which are being made, but there's no transparency. What is being blocked? Why is it being blocked? And in any constitutional democracy, a citizenry needs to know what is the basis of a legal exercise of censorship. What is being censored, at least that's what people should know. All of that is considered secret by the Ministry of Electronics and IT. It's been targeting political creators, people who espouse their opinions online, journalists, quite often, including large press publications. Sometimes there is such rampant censorship. There are international publications which are blocked for some time, or there is even the collateral damage of the supporters ideologically more aligned with this government who are blocked as well. So all of this is happening under a very confusing set of circumstances in which there is a high amount of political control of what we are seeing on our social media, both through legal order, but also through proactive platform censorship for the platforms to maintain their presence in India, to continue making money.
I wanted to ask you about the algorithm issue. You mentioned it, in the interview previously. Doesn't it really create a kind of a bubble for a person? Because if you click on something, if you watch some sort of content, you are bombarded with only that kind of content
Yes.
for a long time.
Yes.
So how do you look at that? Should some sort of review be done about how this algorithm functions and how it really makes this a less democratic space?
So actually, platforms do serve you what you want to look at, but platforms also serve you what you don't like, because their objective is not to is not to give you what you like. Their objective is to keep you on the platform for a long period of time, to make you use it for hours at end, in which you lose a sense of time. So the platform design and the content delivery will be towards maximizing, and this is the phrase used by them, user engagement, right? So if I'm looking at fitness videos, it will show me fitness videos. And if I'm a young man, okay, and I have 10, 15 different interests, it will also pull and bundle that data, especially the large platforms do it through cookie tracking as well as other analytics, and purchasing that data from websites and then forcing a purchase by prompting me again and again. So uh, it'll do it for me, like in terms of a book, a fitness tracker, etc., things like that, which it thinks I will like. Okay, and all of this does need scrutiny. Some of that scrutiny is happening, but it's not happening deep enough. So, for instance, dark patterns is a thing. Dark patterns mean when there's a certain thing which is shown on your smartphone in which you can't skip easily. That's one way, that's one dark pattern, in which a added service is added, okay, and you need to pay more. You're tricked into giving more money, okay. So the algorithm is very important to be reviewed, but I would say that it needs to be reviewed in a way in which there's a form of transparency rather than regulation, right? And the second thing, we need to invest, and we have failed to do that as a country. For a country that has focused so much on getting people online, getting a smartphone in every hand, and many people still don't have it. Large sections of our population don't have it. Most women don't have it. But even then, we have not focused on literacy. We have not focused and built institutional capacity in looking at what will people actually go towards and spend their time on once they get a smartphone in their hand. And it should not be approached from a point of paternalism. It should be approached from a point of, or regulation immediately. It should be approached from the point of evidence, studies, and we don't have the institutional capacity for it. I don't remember a Niti Aayog report on social media and its impact, which empirically analyzes even what happens in a Delhi-like city, which is very easy to survey. They have not done any such work. So when you don't have serious work, which tells you what is the impact, what is causing the impact, or write to these social media companies and you ask that this is your algorithm for this, what are the, if you can't even show us the algorithm, how does it behave? How have you tinkered with it over the past 1 year? We have not made these laws. We have not built the institutional capacity.
And now allegations are being made that the algorithm on Insta has sort of been manipulated because the protest-related content is not showing up as much as it was, till
We
a
don't
few
know.
days ago.
We don't know. We really don't know. And there's such a lack of trust. There's almost this sneaking suspicion always. I'm a little hesitant of saying, yes, they have changed the algorithm, or no, they have not changed the algorithm, or they have dialed the machine down a little or dialed it up a little on certain things. I really don't know. So I can't state with certainty. And anecdotally saying these things is difficult. However, one does know from some of the studies which have been done with respect to people who have documented the genocide in Gaza, that Meta has exercised a form of thematic content restriction and restriction of amplification in certain features of that kind of content, which we've also seen in some of our content on IFF. So there's one feature, for instance, share as story, which is one way when you see something like a short video or you see a picture on somebody's profile and you want to share it as your story. So all of your followers get to see that because that's the top beside your profile that resides on the top left corner, right? So you see it more and people who regularly interact with you see it more. So if that feature is disabled, what happens? So things may be happening a little much more subtly, in which the recommendation system may not be showing that story organically. But when sharing features are being turned off and one does not know why, yes, there is a genuine problem. And there again, if we expect the government to do anything about it, we are being naive, because it is acting in its political interest rather than in the interests of governance or playing its constitutional role.
I wanted to ask you about the new draft IT rules and the onus that they place on individual content creators. They
It's
have
not
to
been,
adhere to the same sort of.
yeah, it's not been notified
Yeah.
yet, thankfully. But yeah, if people remember, there was a draft of the broadcasting bill which got leaked from the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, which it was not wanting to give out, in which it was placing those individual creators which you see on the same regulatory uh, ambit or on the same regulatory system as a traditional news broadcaster, right?
Right.
And the issue with that was, if you've seen, I like to just go to the basics. We have television broadcasting in which satellite uplinking of a channel and downlinking is needed. So you need a license because you're using spectrum. But in addition to that, you need also clearance from the Home Ministry. And then you need to adhere with the Cable Television Regulation Act, which has the content code, which is a very broad-based code, which says that the government can basically trigger a process in which you can be shut down and your license can be taken away if you do three violations of that content code. It's called a three-strike policy. But the three-strike policy has not been applied despite rampant hate speech and misinformation on television news broadcasting media, right? And on the contrary, what you see through cases such as the Madhyamam broadcasting case, there is security clearance which is withheld, in which even the grounds why it has been withheld are not given to Madhyamam broadcasting, because it is perceived not to be an ideologically aligned broadcaster. That is my statement. That is not from the judgment. Okay. So if the existing system of regulation is not working, and yet at the same point in time, you want to bring political commentators, content creators, who are quite often questioning the government, and that's the space which has also emerged because the traditional news broadcast media is more or less like relaying the views of the government or framing the conversation in a way in which we need to be thankful towards this government rather than questioning it when it comes up short. So that's the thing. And the new IT rules were a background way of getting the broadcasting bill, because after the broadcasting bill was leaked, the same content creators, these same YouTubers, these same people basically explained to the people what was at stake. And at that point in time, the government, facing the public backlash, did not introduce the bill or carry forward with it. It recalibrated and today is trying to bring in it through an executive notification rather than an act of parliament. And we've covered all of this at the Internet Freedom Foundation. We've covered its sequence. And in fact, the impetus for the new IT rules and bringing content creators in its ambit is very, very curious. It starts from the India's got latent controversy, in which there was a joke, crude joke made by Ranveer Alabhadia, Beer Biceps himself, the creator of the year, who was awarded by the Prime Minister. And the impetus for the recent changes in IT rules and bringing content creators within its ambit is actually rooted in a very curious instance of a stand-up show called India's Got Latent, which a lot of young people like. They say it's dank comedy. And then there's this a popular YouTuber again, Ranveer Albadia, Beer Biceps, who cracks a very crude joke. There's a huge amount of moral outrage which is generated around it by non-stop television news broadcasting for 3 to 4 days. There are FIRs which are filed in different states. And there's almost a moral panic which is created that what is happening to our young generation? What are they watching online? They're always glued to their smartphones. This is what they're watching. This is what they're learning. Is this our Indian sensibility, civility, tradition? Are these the Indian values you want them? Indian values you want them? So, based on this moral panic, then you have the Supreme Court at a certain point in time also saying that, yes, online people are getting to see everything. Young children are being influenced as well. The government should look into it. It's in one of its orders when Ranveer Alavadia has gone to the Supreme Court and asking for clubbing of all the FIRs. And at the same point in time, these IT rules, it's in the same timeline. It comes out as a draft. Thankfully, it's not been notified yet into law.
In the end, I want to ask you about how do you think the young people who are responsible for, the surge of social media content and the way it is being used in, shaping public opinion, how do you think they would be able to sort of deal with the challenge that is also being faced by social media from the establishment in terms of censorship?
I think young people will be able to withstand it. I think they have already shown us so much hope and possibility beyond what was possible. Like, they've just given me so much hope. When this protest started and Mr. Mangchuk went on his hunger strike, I was many of the people who had the opinion. I did not share it very publicly that he should end his hunger strike because uh, uh, Mr. Dharmendra Pradhan's resignation didn't seem as a possibility, for that would set into motion a domino of accountability that would end with the Prime Minister. As we are seeing the sequence now with E20, that the domino has started falling a little. Yet at the same point in time, with this hope, I also fear that they will be put under a huge amount of violence, attack, slander. So, but I'm hopeful they will figure it out. If they have done this, and this is the first resignation of a union minister in a 12-year term, unbroken term of the Prime Minister, they'll be capable of much, much more. And the other thing which I think young people are showing us is that there can be a form of leadership which comes genuinely from women. Here I would like to look at, and goes beyond political parties in a sense to student bodies, the kind of profile you see Neha Bora having, which integrates both her politics, her verbalization of those politics towards social media. It's not only social media. It comes from actual grassroots work, organizing, and having a set of political ideals and beliefs which are resonating with young people. And what are those ideals? That the state needs to be empathetic, that the state needs to care for its people rather than command them, and the state needs to be in service to them rather than us, all of us, just incessantly working towards that. And I think this is the lesson older people, older millennials can take, because we have, unfortunately, or I myself, unfortunately, have grown up with the tendency of thinking that I need to work for something. And here they are asking the question back. No, we can work for something, but that thing needs to work back for us. It's a very important lesson all of us should hold.
All right. Thank you so much, Apar,
Thank you
for
so much.
talking to us.
Thank you for having me.